Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of the basics of Stellaris, where we're going to talk about factions and how you can make the most of them in game. So what are factions? Well, factions are essentially the politicians of your civilization, and what they do is they represent certain types of people that are going to live within your borders, and it depends on the ethics of your people how many of these factions that you can end up with. If you're keeping the factions happy, then the people are more likely to be inclined to stay in that way of thinking. But drift of ethics can change that. So let's read this that it says here first. A new faction has recently gained traction in the internal political landscape of the United Nations of Earth. Led by scientist Virginia Lowell, they called themselves the Free Thought Association. Their members work for equality and justice for all denizens of your empire. A disgruntled faction will be a source of trouble. One that approves of the government's actions could prove useful, and it definitely does prove useful, because what you'll see here is that once factions actually come in, we're going to jump from a base of 3 influence to a maximum of 6 influence getting produced at the moment. Now this is going to change depending on the ethics of that faction, and let's have a quick look at them right now. So you can see here we've got supporters of that faction. That means the number of your population that are actually interested in joining it, because it matches up with their way of thinking. In this case, they're called the Free Thought Association. The faction support is the percentage of your people that actually support them. In this case, 100% in 1. Now, this is going to change as soon as we unpause it. This is how happy the people are off the back of it. And this is the amount of influence that we're going to gain off of it. So let's bump off of that and we'll move into normal speed at the moment. Let's pause again now that we've brought this up. So you can see that straight away the number of people attached to this faction are pumping up. That is, I believe, our entire people that we're looking at. Let's just check this real quick. We've got 11 people and we've currently got 8 of them here. 100% of the faction are supporting us here, so yeah. So you can see they're getting +3 influence. You've got your name, all that sort of stuff, the support, and these are the issues. The issues here are shown in more detail, but these are what your faction want to happen in your empire. So in this case, autocratic. A nominally elected government will please the Free Thought Association, and that will mean that they become happier at that point. Free movement. Ensuring the free movement of population by allowing all species access to core worlds, prohibiting forced resettlement and disabling migration controls will please Free Thought Association. So that I'll need to go into something else at this stage. We'll look over it in just a second, but I'll run through the rest of the issues first. Reproductive freedoms, ensuring that no species in your empire is subject to population controls will please them. Again, we'll go over this in just a second. And anti-caste, letting any denizen of our empire labour under a caste system will greatly displease the Free Thought Association. So all of these here, if I go up to this section, are covered within our policies and edicts section. Now we're going to be jumping between screens here for a little bit, but I'll just show you what they're talking about here. So first things first, anti-autocratic. A nominally elected government will please Free Thought Association. Now that is to do with the type of government that we have here. So it'll be to do with being a democracy in this case. Next one along our list, free movement. Allowing our people to have complete access to migration and not choosing forced resettlement. So if we click up here, we go to policies and edicts. This is all the policies that take place within your empire. So you can see here that we've got unrestricted wars at the moment. Each of these are pulled down tabs, so you can click on them. That means we're allowed to attack people, claim their territory, we're allowed to defend ourselves, we're allowed to humiliate people, all sorts of things like that. Liberation wars stop you from doing a lot of that stuff. It basically means that you can only change people's opinions by going to war with them. When you attack someone, you can choose to change their way of their ethics essentially to the same type as yours, which will make them more malleable to your diplomacy or being friendly enough to you that they'll be able to vassalize them and various effects like that. So that is what liberation wars are used for. And it also makes it a little bit easier for the universe to get along if you make everyone have the same thinking as you. Not necessarily the most ethical thing to do, but generally but something that can help out in the game. And then defensive wars are all about not attacking anyone and only retaking territory that you've lost. It makes these two here are mostly restricted to pacifist empires, but you could choose to use those ethics if you wanted, and as a result, you could make other alien races that were pacifists more inclined to be friendly to you because you're doing the same sort of ethics as they are. There's all sorts of stuff covered in here, but the ones that we really want to look at here are resettlement first. So resettlement, again, if we just bring this up again, free movement is saying that they want all species to have access to the core worlds and prohibiting forced resettlement and disabling migration controls. So, resettlement here. This policy controls whether or not we're allowed to forcibly relocate pops between planets. So how that works is, we'll not be able to do it in this case because it's off, but if you click on a population, or an individual in a population, or one of your pops that you can move around, you're able to move them around on a planet. They're quite happy at that, they don't care about that. But there is this resettle button here, and what you can do if that edict is active, or that policy, sorry, is active, is that you can then take them here, and we could move them off to another planet. Now, we don't have another planet in this case, although I am in the process of building a colony ship, which will be sent to Alpha Centauri. So once we had Alpha Centauri in this case, you would find that with Resettle active, you could take people from this planet here, you would click on Alpha Centauri, and you'd be able to move the people across, and there's an energy cost attached to doing that. So that is the sort of thing that covers. If we look at the other effects here, we'll keep this open just to reference it later. Core world populations. We can decide which pops are permitted to live on our core worlds. Core worlds are worlds that you control directly. That's the ones that sit within your directly controlled colonized systems section here. You can have anyone out in your sectors once you've set them up without issue, but some ethics will prefer you not to have aliens within your core sector borders. So that's something that you can keep track of later on. We can go over that a bit more when we're going over the builded race that I'll do in another video. But you can see here that all species are permitted at the moment. Citizens and slaves only. So you could have citizens and your slaves running around, but anyone that's not a core to your empire is going to be a slave and sit within. Now this is where one of these other parts come in. If you're a slave, you're part of a caste system. We can go over that later. And then you can have it set to citizens only, so that you're not allowing anyone else on your planets. So you can see that fanatic xenophiles like to have that. And yeah. So xenophiles tend to enjoy this sort of style rather than having all species active. Let's have a look. I think that's the only two that this covers at the moment. We'll just have a quick look at it again just in case. So the caste systems is what we were talking about here with the slaves. It's saying there are no slaves because people don't believe in that. Population controls, that is the last one here that we need to go over. Now, population controls don't sit within this section. What we have to do to get this information up is we have to click on one of our pops again, and we want to go to the View Species button, which brings up our Species tab. You can also get to it here, but I'm just showing you different ways to get into it. And you can set rights to your people. Now, this is essentially how your people are allowed to live within the Empire. So we've got our humans here set as full citizens. You're going to have that for the bulk of your people. Pretty much every race will have this as a setup. You can also have residents. Pops are free but may not engage politically, and the species cannot produce leaders. That's maybe relevant to have for a type of people that have fleeting, for example, or slow leadership. build up, or slow leadership, experience gain, which can be another flaw that you can give your people, and all sorts of things like that. Caste system, pops in this species will be automatically enslaved only while producing food or minerals. Caste system residence, pops of this species will automatically be enslaved only while producing food or minerals. Other pops are free but may not engage politically, and the species cannot produce leaders. So residence here is much the same as this one here. You've got actual slaves, which are always going to be slaves no matter what. And then you've got your undesirables, who are people that you don't want living on your worlds. You will not support them and you want them to leave. Now, this type of government that we have here, I'm going to be jumping around all sorts of screens again here. We click on the government tab here. You can see that it really is dependent upon the ethics that you have, but xenophiles do not like to have enslaved pops, so we can't do anything with that. And they are also very against setting people up as undesirables and such things as that. Now let's bring this up real quick. I'll go back in, click on our view species button again and our set rights. The one that they are talking about here though is population controls. Now, no population controls here means that they are allowed to breed naturally and it's perfectly acceptable for them, but you can... sorry, that's no population controls. Population controls enabled means that your people will become slightly unhappy, but they will not start to produce population on the planets that you have them on. So that can be useful if you've got a species, for example, that is rapid breeders and you're really trying to stop them from breeding constantly because you want to fill up your planets with some other population that you have. Or maybe you just want to build robots somewhere and work around with that. So that is the sort of thing that you're looking to do with that. So if we unpause this here now, we're going to see that most likely all the people in this, in our population here, are going to join this faction. It's not always guaranteed, but it can happen. What you will also find is that as your people start to develop and move out into separate planets, you're going to find that your governing ethics attraction is going to not affect them as much because they're further out from where your capital is. And that will mean that some of your people will think differently. So if we click on some of our pops just now, if we click on some of our pops right now, you can see this person is xenophile. So they are attached to our core ethic of xenophile here. But it might be that we have some that are egalitarian or something like that. There, for example, there's an egalitarian there. And they are part of the Free Thought Association faction, whereas these guys are not. Okay, there's space pirates arrived. We'll just pause this just now so we don't have to deal with them. But you'll see that because there are 8 pops here, 8 of our little individuals on these planets here are going to be attached to that. And the other ones are probably just xenophiles, so they don't really have a faction yet. As I say, eventually extra factions can pop up. You can end up with all sorts. It really depends how happy your people are. The less happy they are, the more likely they are to build up a faction. And that faction could say, for example, that they want to be free. They don't want to be ruled by you at all, so they'd prefer to be vassalized off. Or it might be they just want independence themselves and they're actually not interested in being in your people at all. In that sort of case, you're going to find that they will produce unrest. Unrest is here. And that just means that your planets can end up rebelling, trying to make themselves independence and fight against you and all that sort of thing. So let's have a look at just a little bit further into the game and we'll see how our different factions have started to progress from there. So if we now have a look at the factions that we have set up here, you can see that there are 2 factions. The Free Thought Association that we had previously, and we are still ticking all the boxes to make the people as happy as possible. But you will see that instead of making the 3 influence that we were, we're now making a little bit less. This is because there is an additional faction that now takes up a little bit more of the all the noise and space of our people. So we've got these xeno rights organizations that have arrived that say that our people should be a little bit nicer to others. So we can see here that the indirect xenology here has little bits of bonuses. So we've got happiness bonuses coming out of there. They don't want purging. We haven't purged anyone, so that's fine. Now, what you'll see with some of these is that you won't actually get bonuses for completing them. You will only get no negatives for completing them. So you can't always make everyone fully happy, but this is effectively warning you that if you were to purge people, this organization here would get very upset, and as a result, they would start to cause issues at that point. So refugees welcome means that if we look into our options here with policies, you can see that refugees are welcome in the society. You can set it up so that only your people are welcome, or you can set it up with no refugees, but that is a xenophile. That is for races that are not xenophiles, and of course we are a xenophile here, so we can't do anything with that. Let's bring up this faction again. Enclaves Incorporated, keeping an enclave station within our borders, facilitates cultural exchange, which will please xeno rights. Enclaves are, if I bring up this list here, these kind of guys, the artisans, the curators, not marauders, they're kind of different. Traders, that sort of thing. If we can find one of them that sits within our borders, now you can tell that they are here by having this little castle symbol here. If we can get one of them within our border, which I'll be very happy to do quite soon, we can start to make those people a little bit happier. So that is definitely something that we want to do here. Currently just moving out, trying to take up as much space here as we can. But we'll get one of those set up here. So the enclaves, once we have them within our borders, that will create a bit more happiness. We might even be able to get back up to 6 influence. Diplomacy traditions. Adopting diplomacy traditions will please the Xeno Rights Organization. And if we bring up another thing that I've not talked about fully yet, which is traditions. Again, we'll be covering this in another video. But if we click on traditions here, this shows you the tradition trees. Now I did go over this very slightly before, but essentially this faction wants us to adopt this tree here. And by adopting that tree, it will make them happier. So we're going to do that shortly. Well, it'll be a little while before, to be honest, because we've gone down the discovery tree here and we've started to build the harmony tree. I think most likely we'll go into either prosperity or expansion and then diplomacy after, but I mean possibly, depending on how this game pans out, we would take this earlier, but mostly you would take this to make people like you a little bit more, and I don't think we need that too much at the moment, but we would see how that pans out. Anyway, this gives you a basic understanding of the factions, how to please them, and things you can do that could upset them. Now, there is one other thing that I'd wanted to talk about during the video that I forgot at the time when I was first recording it, and that is to do with managing factions. So I've brought the factions tab up here, and I've clicked on the Free Thought Association, and what we can do is we can go down to this button here, Manage Faction, and what this does is it brings up 3 tabs, and these will have different effects upon the factions that you have active. So you can embrace a faction. Embracing it means that the policies and values of the Free Thought Association will be integrated into our people, bringing them into our government, and this will permanently change your governing ethics and displease all other factions in the Empire. So what that effectively will do is that it will encourage our people to move towards, in this case, egalitarian. So if we have a look at our people real quick here, it would mean... Oh, sorry, that's the wrong tab. If we hit F1 or click on the government tab here, we can see that our people would start to drift away from xenophile and become more like a fanatic egalitarian. Now that's something that might not be too much of an issue since the bulk of our people are actually attached to this particular ethos, but again, if we bring up this, if we had the Xeno Rights Organization ticked at this point, then it could change the people to become, in this case, what would that turn into? Xenophile ethos. So it could drag people closer towards xenophiles and might end up changing our ethics from fanatic egalitarian to fanatic xenophile. And that would change or possibly change the policies that would be attached to our governing ethics and all the rest of the stuff that would work along with that. So, for example, it might mean that our civics would have to change. It depends what the prerequisites on these civics actually are, but it could change what we are allowed to have within our empire itself. I can go over these in another video as well, just how to reform governments and all that sort of thing. But we'll pop back in here just now. We can have a look at the other options that manage factions controls. So we could also click on promote faction. What this does is it promotes the policies and values of Free Thought Association. This will make their ethics more attractive to our population for as long as it is active. And that will mean that people will start to embrace being an egalitarian more. So you would click on the promote factions button. You can see that it increases the ethics attraction by 100%. Means that people are more likely to drift towards that way of thinking. But it does cost influence per month. Now that's going to drop off of your choice up. That's going to drop off the maximums that you have up here, which might be a problem for you, especially if you're trying to build up your influence over time. It's why factions are really important. So you are effectively taking the influence that you're getting out of these and kind of shifting it back into encouraging people to join this faction. You can also do the opposite of this, which is suppress this faction. It means that their ethics will be less attractive to people and they will start to drift away from it. It will create unhappiness for anyone that is in this faction. It costs a little bit less influence, but you can see that the egalitarian ethics attraction will be reduced, so it would start to make people move off to different types, really. That's all that is attached to the managing of factions. Using this button here, especially the embrace faction, you can really start to change the way that your race will interact with others, and possibly will be able to change the policies and edicts that you would be allowed to use. So it can be valuable in some situations, but mostly it's a more deep way of looking into the game and changing the way that your race are going to play during the game. So it is not something that I would encourage, especially for a beginner. But it's food for thought later down the line if you have an idea of what you want to do, or possibly a random event could kick in during the game and shift your ethics around. And you might want to try and drag them back to the way of thinking that you actually wanted at the start of the game. Thanks for watching the video today. I hope you found it useful. If you think I've missed anything or would like to comment, please feel free in the comments below. I would also like to say at this point that I am a streamer that streams full time on Twitch. So that's twitch.tv/combat_bunny. I'll add that link into the description as well. If you would like to pop along and say hi, or just want to discuss anything to do with Stellaris or any of the other games that we're playing on the channel at the time, feel free. And I will see you the next time, where we're going to find out about research and all the details behind that. Take care, and I will see you the next time.